It's great to be with everyone today. So when I wrote that, and Texas was suffering, but Texas is still suffering. So we send our prayers and blessings to our friends and family in Texas. So, you all know me a little bit, and you know how much I love Charles Fillmore, and I love the teachings of Charles Fillmore, and I love the metaphysics that we as Unity students are able to embrace in our everyday life. And so this is one of those stories that I thought it has something for us. And I wasn't really quite sure exactly what it was, but the more I dove into it, the more I thought this is really a powerful way for us to understand the teachings. So I'd like to just read the parable first, so you can hear the story. It comes in Matthew, and it's only in Matthew. It's not in any of the other Gospels. It's Matthew 25, the parable of the 10 virgins. Sometimes they're thought of as the 10 bridesmaids. So imagine that they're bridesmaids, virgin bridesmaids. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. The wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both of us. You go instead to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the others also came. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour." Such an interesting story. And I always enjoy reading the more traditional way that this story is interpreted, because it helps me to see how powerful our unity teachings are and how extraordinary it is for us to really understand the teachings of Jesus and these stories that are told in the Bible from a place of metaphysics. And again, just to anchor what I mean when I say metaphysics, what I'm saying is this story itself is a picture of something that's going on inside each one of us. It's part of our spiritual journey toward a place of spiritual enlightenment, toward a place of being one with the divine presence. And if you look at the way traditional Christians look at this story, they see it about dividing those who are going to get into heaven and those who are not going to make it. The door will be closed because they haven't accepted Christ into their hearts, become baptized, or whatever the particular flavor of that judgment and division is. But in unity, we understand this story in such a different way. And I really, I hope today that as I go through the teaching, that each one of us can find some area in our life where there's a deep meaning here that is unfolding for us. So I put in my talk title, "What Are We Waiting For?" Because this story is kind of an interesting story, and it's great to know a little bit of the history of the time when this story was written. In the time of Jesus, a wedding actually was held in 3 different places and 3 different experiences for people. There would be what would be the actual union between husband and wife, and then there would be a formal, like a ceremony. And the third piece would be a banquet that normally would be held at the home of the groom, or the groom would be the one who would host the banquet. And oftentimes that banquet would be in the evening. So what we're seeing here in this picture that Jesus has created in the parable is we're seeing the 10 bridesmaids or the 10 virgins who were part of the wedding party. And what they were really invited to do was stand along the side of the road. Because it often happened in the evening, they would have their lamps to light the way for the bridegroom to lead his bride into the banquet hall, and to be there as a light the way for all the other wedding guests to follow into the banquet hall. So that's kind of the container that this story is focused on. So this, as the story goes, there are 10 of these virgin bridesmaids. And what happens is the bridegroom is delayed. Who knows why the bridegroom is delayed? There are many reasons today why somebody might be delayed to get to their own banquet, but that doesn't really matter. The idea is that the bridesmaids were waiting, and because it became late, they got sleepy and they fell asleep. So here they all are on the side of the road, they're falling asleep, and all of a sudden they hear the message, the bridegroom's coming, and they wake up and they trim their lamps, they light their lamps. Well, of the bridesmaids, 5 of them had the foresight, they were prepared, and they had extra oil to be able to fill their lamps so that the light would be up long enough to be able to take them through the night. The 5, what they called foolish bridesmaids, didn't bring any extra oil. And because the night had come longer than they originally expected, they ran out of oil. So they asked the bridesmaids with oil, won't you share your oil with us? We're running out of oil. We're not going to have enough. And the wise bridesmaid said, no, we can't do that. That means that we'll both run out. So you need to go buy your own oil. Anyway, the story goes that the wise bridesmaids were able to go into the banquet with the bride and groom, and the door was shut. And when the other bridesmaids came, there was no way that they could get into the banquet. So what are we talking about here? What is all this in our life? I was thinking about waiting, because it's a big piece of what's happening here. And I think for many of us, there's so many ways that we're waiting in our lives. I have friends in my life. I have one friend who has a physical challenge, who is waiting for the healing of that physical challenge. Now, there may be some of you who have that same experience, where there's something that doesn't feel quite right in the body, and you're waiting for the healing to come. I have another friend who has a brain tumor, and he's been dealing with this brain tumor for a couple of years. And rather than waiting for the healing, my friend Eric is actually waiting to die. Very different kind of experience of his waiting. I have another friend who is owner of a restaurant, and she is really scrambling, trying to make ends meet with her business, doing the best she can, running outdoor services, but she's waiting and waiting for things to change so that her income will increase and she'll be able to keep her restaurant. She's in that waiting mode. I have another friend who's actually a client of mine, and she's been married for 40 years, but she's been feeling like her relationship is not really working anymore. And so she and her husband have separated, and she's in this place of waiting. And there's something inside her that is waiting for her husband to change. So I noticed that we all have this quality within ourselves where I call it kind of a quality of becoming. It's like whatever is here right now, we're not in full acceptance of. We're not really present to fully what is here. We're waiting for something else. We want it to be different. We want ourselves to become different. We want the situation to be different somehow. So we all have had this experience in our life of having a desire for something to be different than what it is. And this is part of the experience that we're looking at here when we look at the teaching that Jesus is giving us, and especially when we understand it from the point of view of Charles Fillmore. So going right into the Fillmore teachings, Fillmore talks about the 10 virgins, and he says the 10 virgins actually represent our 5 senses. There are 5 senses in 2 different states of being. One is the state of our senses that we use and reflect in the outer world, what we see with our eyes and how we can say, oh, I see there's a lamp there. Oh, I see this is a book. Oh, I see this situation with my eyes. I hear this situation with my ears. I understand it in a certain way. I feel it with a certain way. We have this outer 5 senses. But Fillmore also says, and that would be the foolish virgins. He also says we have an inner set of 5 senses, spiritualized senses. And these would be, like he would refer to it as the soul eye or the spiritual ear. We have a way, when we have literally spiritualized our senses, to be able to see and to know from a very, very different place of being what is true moment to moment. And it's very, very different from the way the outer senses, which rely on our intellect to understand and to take in information and to transform and give us a clarity about what is ours to know and to see and to do in the world. It's a very different way of operating in the world than when we operate through our spiritual senses. So notice that for yourself, this quality that we all have within ourselves, to literally spiritualize our 5 senses, to see with the spiritual eye. And I think the last time I was here, I spoke about this, Fillmore talking about the quality of the imagination, which is in the mystic eye, the third eye. We have this capacity to see beyond that which we see in the physical, don't we? We have the ability, Fillmore talks about it as the scissors of the mind, to cut it out with the spiritual eye. We have the ability to hear more than what we hear with the ear, to have an inner knowing through the presence of the divine as the divine moves through us. So when Fillmore is interpreting this Bible story for us, what we're talking about here is oil. What is the oil? What is the oil? The oil, what is it that fills our lamp? And again, even the imagery of a lamp is very powerful, because to me, the imagery of the lamp is so much about not only the ability that we have to see in the darkness, to be able to use our spiritual eye, to use our spiritual ears, use all our spiritual faculties. When it may appear to be dark in the outside, we still have this capacity to be in the light. And beyond that, if you remember what I said about the story, these virgins were holding a lamp to shine the way for others to see. And so for me, this is a really powerful part of this story. It's about how when we have spiritualized our senses, when we have spiritualized those qualities of being that allow us to understand the world around us, understand who we are, we literally have a quality that can show the way to others. We have the quality to be a beacon for others, to be a light in the world. And I truly believe that Charles Fillmore thought that's who he was in the movement of unity, that they were being a beacon in the world to bring people into a different understanding of who Jesus was and what Jesus came to teach, that he came to teach love, he came to teach forgiveness, not to bring about a separation in the world, but rather to bring us into a place of oneness. So we're talking about in the story, we're talking about going to the celebration of a marriage. And a marriage, metaphysically, a marriage is about, we can think about the energy of masculine and feminine coming together, but metaphysically, Fillmore was talking about the union of consciousness. He was talking about the coming together of all the different levels of our consciousness. And last time I was with you a month ago, I talked about the 12 powers and how this really activates the 3 levels of consciousness that Fillmore talks about, this spiritual consciousness, super consciousness, or the Christ consciousness, which comes in through the crown of our head and activates our faith faculty and all the other 12 powers within us. But in addition to this higher consciousness, we have to marry the consciousness of the conscious mind, or the intellect, that which we know and we believe through the outer senses. The conscious mind has to be spiritualized through our power of spiritual understanding and power of spiritual will. And we also have to bring into this union of our consciousness, that which is in the subconscious, in the emotional level of what our feeling nature is. And so when we talk about going to a marriage, bringing our light, bringing our lamp, bringing this inner awareness that we have to this marriage, we're actually talking about bringing all of our faculties together, unifying the higher consciousness of super consciousness, divine consciousness, Christ consciousness, however you want to language it, with that intellectual understanding that we have that may be coming to us as we look in the outer with our outer five senses, but it's spiritualized. It also is able to pull up whatever feelings are going on inside of us in the moment and to merge all these together. And this is the marriage in consciousness that Fillmore's talking about. So this divine marriage, it's such a powerful awareness for us to have, because, and for me, what I really see in this teaching is this capacity for us to realize that no matter what is going on for us in the outer, and we all have stuff, you know, I was thinking about in my own life, what am I waiting for right now? I'm waiting to get my vaccine, you know, and I'm waiting to get my vaccine. And there was this kind of like, when it came out, oh yes, it's coming. And I'm 74. So I just didn't hit that 75 limit. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be with all those people who are 65. You know, my mind did this whole little spin, and I was definitely not in my Christ consciousness there. You know, I was getting my information and I was putting it in, and I was getting into sort of a self obsessed frenzy about it. And it wasn't until I let go and let my daughter help me. She found me a vaccine, you know, I've got an appointment in a couple weeks, and I'm just like totally relaxed into it. But I realized how when I was in that outer struggle of trying to make it work without really calming myself down, I was going nowhere. I was all on the internet. I don't know if anybody else is looking for their vaccine. Maybe some of you already have it. Then I thought, what else? I'm waiting. I want the vaccine so I can go see my grandkids, because they're just getting bigger and I'm just not getting to see them. So what is it in your life? What are you waiting for? What is it that isn't happening right now that you think ought to be happening? And how is it? Are you the foolish bridesmaid? You know, are you just bringing part of your oil? You only have a little bit of your oil. You're not really filling yourself up with the spiritual energy that we've been given through these unity teachings. The power to really understand that you and I are one with the Christ presence in every single moment. And when we find that, we find ourselves feeling that sense of separation, when we find ourselves thinking it's about someone else, or when we find ourselves feeling like, oh, you know, how am I going to handle this? We've lost that sense of connecting to the listening with the spiritual ear or seeing with the eye of spirit. And that's when we need to do what Charles Fillmore did every single day. We need to go into the stillness. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because part of this story has everybody falling asleep. And I thought, what's kind of a strange thing, you know, that they're hanging out and they're waiting, and then they're out, they fall asleep. But, you know, when you look at what Fillmore talks about sleep, he says, sleep has the capacity to take things that are disharmonious and bring them into a place of harmony, kind of to take things that are unraveled and to bring them back and knit them together. And he likened the quality of sleep, where we don't really know what's going on, to this divine stillness and divine silence that happens when we go into a time of meditation, when we go into a time of connecting in with higher consciousness. So the fact that the bridesmaids fell asleep because what they were waiting for wasn't happening, in a sense, it's giving us a little bit of guidance to say, hey, when you're in that place of anxiety, or you're in a place of fear, or you don't have enough oil in your lamp and you're feeling kind of desperate about what's going on, maybe that's time to take a nap. Maybe it's time to shut down that focus on the outer senses, that focus on our sort of the ego mind of the intellect, and to literally move into the place where the divine presence can bathe and activate and spiritualize all the inner powers that we have, to reactivate our power of faith. So hopefully this is a kind of an interesting analogy for all of us. And the thing that was so amazing to me was the last part of it. And I actually couldn't quite get it until this morning. I had a call with one of my teachers from India. And they were talking about this experience that they called it a singularity. And the experience was like, there comes a time when something occurs and everything changes. Something happens and everything changes. And in a sense, I feel like, we were, as lunatics, we were given a gift of that something, that awareness, that inner awakening. When that inner awakening happens within us, we become aware of the powerful presence of the divine within us, everything changes. And what I saw when I looked at this again, when I looked at this story, and it says that the door was shut. Those who didn't have enough oil were not able to get into this higher state of consciousness. The door was shut. And then the last message was, let me just read the last one. Truly, I tell you, I don't know you. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or hour. And what I thought about that, I thought that was such a strange thing. But I realized it's about our inner awareness. It doesn't matter, moment to moment. Something comes up in our life when we just feel like the door is shut to us. We don't have a solution. There doesn't appear to be a solution. But if we can actually tune into higher consciousness, tune into that place where we know the presence of the divine is within us, in the stillness, in the quiet, that we reconnect into that union, that inner marriage, and the door will open for us. The way will be made clear for us. The door is just a metaphor for whatever it is that feels like a block in our life, that makes us feel closed off or shut. And so I think this is a really powerful, it's a really powerful story. And what I'd love to do right now is just go through a really short meditation to spiritualize using these points in the body that we focused on last week, to spiritualize, activate the crown energy, where Charles Fillmore says, this is where the Christ light comes. It comes in through the crown at the top of our head. Right up in our forehead up here, not the third eye, but the forehead is where the conscious mind is active. That's where the intellect is very active, the power of will and understanding. And then down in our solar plexus is where we feel things, in the gut pit of your stomach, where you have those feelings. So we bring all these together and bring them back up to the center of the brain where our faith is. So I'd love to just do a very brief meditation with all of us, just to spiritualize this. This is a way to get it, to really replenish the oil in all of our lamps, so that we can be that beacon and be the one who carries the energy, carries the light, not only for our own journey to the wedding feast, because the wedding's already happened. This is the feast. This is the celebration. So I invite you to close your eyes. Just take a moment to breathe in the presence of God. Breathe in the presence of the Christ light, however you know that presence. And as you begin to feel more relaxed in your physical body, focus your attention on the crown of your head. Cora Fillmore reminds us that this is the spot where the divine grace begins to enter the physical body. So as you focus on the crown of your head, inwardly affirm the Christ presence. The Christ light is quickened in me. The Christ light is quickened in me. The Christ light is quickened in me. And now move your attention to your forehead, which is thought to represent that conscious level of the mind. And in consciousness, realizing that you are aware that the Christ light is being quickened in you, inwardly affirm, I am aware that the Christ light is quickened in me. I am aware that the Christ light is quickened in me. I am aware that the Christ light is quickened in me. And now move your attention to the solar plexus, below the rib cage and the pit of the stomach area. This represents the subconscious area of the mind. And gratitude is an emotion that we can feel at this area of our being. So take a moment to inwardly affirm, I am grateful that the Christ light is being quickened in me now. I am grateful that the Christ light is being quickened in me now. I am grateful that the Christ light is being quickened in me now. And now let the center of your attention move into the middle of your brain, a place where the pineal gland, the pituitary, the hypothalamus all intersect, the faith center of the brain. And silently affirm, the Christ light in me calls forth my spiritual power of faith. The Christ light in me calls forth my spiritual power of faith. The Christ light in me calls forth my spiritual power of faith. And take a deep breath and gently bring your awareness to the full body, starting at your feet, under the soles of your feet. Just bring your attention up through your legs and thighs and hips, up to your chest and your heart. Feel the energy radiating from your shoulders out down your arms into your hands, and back up your arms and to the back of your throat and up through your neck and your jaw, into your head, through your eyes, and up and out through the crown of your head. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So thank you all so much for being present. May your lamps be brightly lit on this journey in life. So we feel the blessing of being the light of the world. You are the light of the world. May we continue to connect deeply with the divine presence as it moves in and through every cell of our body and becomes the ears of the soul, the eyes of the soul, as we look out upon the world and support one another in this journey, this amazing journey we call unity. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God, for unity of Santa Rosa.